Hi card makers, it's Trisha here at Club Scrap with the Prism card kit assembly workshop. Welcome, thank you for coming. And we are going to make a batch of really beautiful cards this month, including 4 of these split flap cards that are perfect for writing some nice sentiments inside. And then we'll make a set of 4 of these standing bridge cards. They're cleverly scored and very, very easy to assemble, and they also include a pocket into which you can put a tag. We have 4 of those, all in different, really fun, beautiful colors. And then finally we'll make a set of 4 of these vertical or horizontal hinge cards. So one piece of paper acts as a hinge to connect a 2-inch flap to a 3-inch flap, and it's kind of just a clever way to do it. These also come together very, very easily. They're fun to make. If you have your printed instructions, that's great. If not, I will just walk you through the whole process of trimming and sorting the papers. And for now, we'll just set aside all of these beautiful embellishments. The first thing I'm going to do is have you put the paper into the order in which it will be trimmed, and that can prevent some errors from happening. So I'm going to consult my instructions and then just grab those color names for you. It helps to hold the paper in your arm and then just grab from there. And we'll begin by finding the dark blue plane. Just grab one of those, and then a light blue plane. I'll stack that on the base of my trimmer. Then a yellow. And finally a red. Next we're going to go back to the light blue again. Then one black, one yellow, one red. Okay, then both prints. I'm going to put those face down in the stack. Next I'm going to have you find the sheet of cut aparts that's mostly white. And finally the one that's mostly colorful. So we'll place those all face down and then flip the whole stack over, and we'll begin the trimming process with this blue paper. Special shout out to you if you're brand new to this. I am using a 12-inch guillotine style trimmer with an accordion pocket file, and I use this when I make my pages and my cards. So I'm using the letters A, B, and C and D for card set A, B, C, and then D. Sometimes I throw in like things I didn't use into that 4th pocket. But what that does is keeps us organized. So primarily all the trimmed pieces will go in the pockets, unless those pieces need to be scored or something else needs to be done with them before we can file them away. Now I'm turning to page 2 of my instructions to get started, and the first color in the diagram here is dark blue, and I'm also going to take the light blue as well. But right away you have to notice that there's this arrow on the diagram that indicates the direction of the grain of the paper, like which way the paper would need to dip most easily. So I'm going to grab the paper by its edge, study how flexible it seems to be from this direction versus this direction. Feels a lot more stiff. This is way more flexible, so that'll be the direction of the dip should match the direction of the arrow. I'll repeat that whole process for the light blue. It dips most easily from top to bottom, so I'll stack those into the trimmer together. And we'll follow these cutting instructions for step 1. Our first cut's at 9 3/4, and whenever you have 2 sheets of paper stacked, make sure you stabilize firmly on that clear bar. And then slide down to 5. And then we'll rotate the 5 and trim at 9. Now these pieces, it's currently 5 by 9. I'm going to set them aside to be scored. And then we did make this smaller 3 by 5. That's going to go in pocket C. And then the next strip, these are 4 3/4 by 12. We've got a couple of cuts to make. First one's at 11 1/4. 9 1/2. And 6 3/4. So we just made like these larger pieces, some medium pieces, and some smaller pieces. All of this goes into pocket C. And then there is, at this point, just these little scraps. These are 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to put those in pocket D, what I didn't use this time. And now just pay attention carefully to the process of trimming this last and final strip. We'll begin horizontally at 11 3/4, and then 5 3/4. Give that thing a rotation so it's now vertical, and we'll cut at 2. So these pieces, the larger and the smaller ones that we made, if you'll notice, they nest together perfectly. So all of this actually goes back in pocket C. Almost that whole thing went into C. And ironically, I'll just share with you, if you just cut a bunch of papers just like that, you'll have all the pieces you need. If you trim 4 papers, you'll have enough pieces to make 4 of these cards, and all of the colors in your selection will be represented in each card. So now we have just a few more little scraps that remain from that whole process. And I'm going to grab the yellow. We have to repeat this diagram one more time. So check your grain direction, dipping top to bottom. Just confirm that always. And we're going to trim this exactly the same way we just did. So 9 3/4 and 5. Rotate and cut at 9. This gets scored, so we'll set it aside. This goes right into pocket C. And we'll take these next larger pieces, trim horizontally at 11 1/4, 9 1/2, and 6 3/4. Finally, just go ahead and stack up the large, the medium, and the small. All of these pieces, pocket C again. There is the little 3/4 inch scrap from that section. And then one more trick on this long skinny strip. We'll cut at 11 3/4, 5 3/4, rotate, and trim at 2. This is on the vertical. So again, these smaller pieces are trimmed to nest the larger pieces, and all of that goes in pocket C. Again, all the components for the C card are trimmed out of those first 4 sheets of paper. So it's a wonderful formula that you can use again and again to recycle those trimming instructions. This makes that vertical hinge card. Next, we move on to the light blue. So I'll check grain direction. The arrow indicates we need it to dip easily again from top to bottom. So I'll do that. Here we go. And this time we'll cut at 11 3/4, taking off a tiny little scrap. 11 3/4 and 6 1/4. We'll cut horizontally, and then we're rotating that 6 1/4 inch piece, and we're going to make 2 cuts, 11 1/2 and 11. So these larger pieces become the card basis for set B, those like standing cards. And then we have these narrow little strips. Those also are going to be used in set B. And then this next big chunk here, we'll cut both pieces at the same time, horizontally at 11 and 7. This actually gets set aside to be scored, and it will become the base for card set A. This next pair of pieces, it's easy to miss, but we need to trim these horizontally at 5 1/4. We're just going to take off a little scrap, and then I'll just point out that these pieces will mat onto those other split flap card bases. So that goes in set A. And then we also have these strips. They're 1 by 5 1/4, pocket A, and some scraps to throw into pocket D. I just like to put all my scraps in there. If I just want a little something, feel free to use those as you wish. And we get to do that again with the yellow paper in this collection. So I will check for my grain direction, top to bottom, grain, top to bottom. 11 3/4 once again. And 6 1/4. Rotate. We'll make 2 cuts, 11 1/2 and 11. Set these aside to be scored, and then you have the 4 little 1/2 inch strips, pocket B. This next section, we'll cut at 11 and 7. Set these aside to be scored, and don't forget the trim on this one. Trim horizontally at 5 1/4. That goes in pocket A. Oh, actually, I think I missed this. This also needs to be trimmed horizontally at 5 1/4 so that they fit where they're supposed to go. These little pieces, I'm going to grab it out of pocket A from earlier. Also going to give these a little snip horizontally at 5 1/4, just a little bit, so we don't have to do that later. And we'll put those back in pocket A. Sorry about that. And then some little strips as scraps in pocket D, and definitely something for the circular file. I'm completely fine with disposing of these. We've reached the print, and in this case, the direction of the print, the grain direction, I should say, does not matter. I'm gonna just randomly place this in my trimmer and cut at 11 1/4. I did see in the diagram that this piece on the end becomes a scrap, so I put the least colorful piece in that spot. That's the only thinking behind it. So again, that's trimmed at 11 1/4 and 6. Now with the rotation, this is super easy. We're just going to cut at all the even numbers. So 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. All of those little 2-inch pieces go in pocket B. This next one, follow along, we'll cut at 10, 7 1/2, 5, and 2 1/2. The 4 pieces that are the same size, and you'll notice that there's one that's a little bit narrower. So the 4 same size pieces go in pocket A, and this other piece was not used along with the 12-inch strip, so that can go in D. Or didn't use. This last one, it does matter. The grain direction does matter, so I'm going to just check it to make sure it dips easily. And in this case, left to right. So the paper goes the opposite of what we've been doing. And just to show you again in the instructions, here's the first one in the second set that we trimmed. Here we did this print just now, and here we are at this one. And it needs to go left to right so that when we score these pieces, it's kind of going to be a happy thing and not a frustrating thing. All right, 2 cuts. First one is at 10, and then 6. I'm going to give that a rotation and cut at 9, 6, and 3. So all divisible by 3 here. 9, 6, 3. Okay, these 4 pieces end up in pocket B. And then this next one, we're also going to do the same thing again. So 9, 6, and 3. That was 9, 6, and 3. We're going to set aside these 4 pieces to be scored. One last piece we'll cut horizontally at 6. And both of these pieces get placed in pocket B. We're moving on already with all of the basic trimming finished. Now we're into the cut aparts. And I just want to say that a member suggested in our private Club Scrap chat group that she reduces the percentage of speed on my videos to slow me down. So I work according to her pace. And she said my voice sounds even more mellow than it does on a normal basis. Just don't slow me down so you can't understand me. Anyway, so if you want to try that, give it a whirl. Slow me down to like 77% and see what happens. It'll slow everything down. All right, we're going to place this in the trimmer with the tags on the right here and give this a cut at around 6 1/2 inches. Normally I don't put these wider things on the right, but it'll definitely work. And then slide down one more time, and you're going to go to 3 3/4. Now this next part is going to be incredibly weird. I'm just going to do a little neaten up cut here on each side to just get that perimeter. Okay, now we have the dotted lines. When you're trimming this, ignore the dots, okay? Pay attention to the cut or the registration marks. They're 2 totally different things. These are going to grow up to become pockets, and if you don't cut on the marks and you do cut on the dots, you're going to have some problems with your pockets, all right? So here's an advantage to paying attention and doing this with me. That first cut was at 9, and then 6 again, and 3. I want you to set aside all 4 of these pieces to be scored. So along with the other card bases and such. Then this next one, I'll place the little small bonus strip on the right, and we'll cut at 11, 8 1/4, 5 1/2, and 2 3/4. And again, this is just following along with those registration marks. All of these pieces end up in pocket A, and you do have a little scrap that we can put in D for didn't use it. You can choose to use it, of course. Now, pay attention here as well. I'm going to put this in right side up, but there is a little scrap that's going to form at the end of the row here. So I'm cutting this at 11 3/4 and 10 and 7 1/2, 5, 2 1/2. All 4 of these tags are the inserts for card set B. And then this last one needs a little rotation to trim that bonus off the edge. And this is going to go to card set C. Here we have a few little scraps. We have one more piece to trim out. It's pretty minor. We're just going to go ahead and place this in where it says "You are a gem" should be in the upper left, and all the diamonds are on the right. And I'm going to do some little neatening up, and by that I just mean I'm going to match up the perimeter of this with the registration marks, just in case there's a minor imperfection from like the massive trimmer used for this. So my first cut here now, I'm going to, oh, I see a little neaten up needs to be done over here. I'm going to take care of that first. If you do them first, then you get all of them done in one swoop if it needs to be done. Okay, back to my position here at 8 1/4 and 5 1/2. I'm going to watch very carefully here for a rotation, cutting at 11 1/2, then sliding all the way over, and be real careful with your placement here at around 7. Just do your best to align that obvious little seam in the artwork here. And if you need to make a slight correction, the trimmer is certainly capable of doing that. Then 5 1/4, 3 1/2, and 1 3/4. Just position this so you can see. All right, so you have 4 vertical sentiments here. These all go in pocket C. Then you have these remaining 3 pieces. The thanks has a little scrap that needs to come off the end, so I'll make sure that that is placed on the right. And you'll cut at 5 1/4. Then 3 1/2 and 1 3/4. With a trimmer like this, it's really nice that you can stabilize the little piece of paper in there perfectly fine. So we've got these 3 pieces going in pocket C and then a scrap. Here we have another one that has a bonus that'll come off the end. I didn't use it. Trimming at 11, 8 1/4, 5 1/2, 2 3/4. And all 4 of these end up in pocket A. So here we have like some bonus colorful stuff, and you can trim that out any way you wish. You can put it in your bonus pocket and forget about it, or you can use it. I did not officially use this. I did officially use some of these diamonds, but for now I'll just place this in pocket D for decorative elements, and we're going to sub out our trimmer for a score pal. So here I've got my score pal, and I've got 1 of 2 tools. Now first of all, I generally don't use the plastic tool that comes with a score pal. They kind of wear out because they're made out of plastic. I sometimes just score my paper with my favorite bone folder, and you might have your own favorite bone folder. This one's mine. And lately too, I've been using the larger point of a stylus tool, which I think the Martha Stewart score pal or scoreboard or whatever she calls it comes with something like this, and I find it does a pretty nice job of giving me the perfect size line. We're going to start out by scoring these cut aparts that have the dotted lines, and this is super easy. You're basically scoring at about a 1/2 inch from each edge, but what's nice is you can just take any old notch in the score pal, like I'm at 6 inches, but don't have to be. Make sure you're flush at the top, line up the dotted line with the notch and just engage and pull toward you. Then rotate 1 turn and repeat, lining up that dotted line again, and 1 more, score. And you'll repeat that for the remaining 3 pieces that look just like it. All of these are used in card set B. Next, I'll take the 4 little prints. These are 3x4, and you'll score horizontally at 1 inch. But here's a little tip for you. Oftentimes, since it's 1 inch and I'm right-handed, it can be difficult to get that score line at the inch. So instead, I move my paper over to the right side of the board, and I score at 11, which is 12 minus 1 is 11, and just score that way. Now, this is just a personal preference because I am right-handed. You might be left-handed, and you're like, finally, a 1 inch score line. It's so much easier, but this I find is just a little bit more comfortable for me. And then place all of these in pocket A. Next, locate the 4 pieces that measure 5.5 by 7. Put them in the score pal at the 7 inch mark, and I'm just going to go ahead and do 2 at a time here, and I'll score at 4 1/4. If you want to make 2 passes, you can, but either way, it's just a little faster to do 2 at a time if you feel pretty confident with your ability to not break the paper or get a nice solid line through both layers. That's, again, horizontally at 4 1/4. These go in pocket A. I'm kind of working my way backwards in the instructions. This next one, there's an important little flip step here. So just bear with me. We're going to score these on the horizontal at 2 1/4. and 8 3/4. Then flip this from the bottom to the top and score 2 more times. The first number is, now don't be upset with me, it's 3 7/8. So here's 3, 3 1/4, 3 1/2, 3 3/4. 3 7/8 is between the 3 3/4 and the 4. Now 7 1/8, that's between the 7 and the 7 1/4. There's a little hash mark right in there. Okay, I did 2 at a time there, so I'm going to grab the other 2. The first score is at 2 1/4, and then 8 3/4. Flip this paper from the bottom to the top, and now we get to score weirdly. So this is 3 7/8. That's halfway between 3 3/4 and 4. And 7 1/8, halfway between 7 and 7 1/4. All of these pieces are used in set B. All right, one more. This is really simple. I'm just going to place them horizontally into the score pal and score at 7. That's going to give me that 2 inch flap on those clever hinge cards. So 7. Do that for all 4 pieces and file them in pocket C. Now that the scoring is done, I'll put this away and we're going to focus on card set A. You can start by emptying the contents of the entire pocket and sorting the pieces kind of in order by size. What I like to do at this point is consult my instructions. I'm on page 3, card set A, to just figure out what pieces in the pocket belong with which card, and I try to assemble it in the same way. So I think the first card I lay out here should be this light blue, followed by the yellow, and it should be noted that you can sort this in any way you wish, and then the black and the red. So that's how it's shown here, but you can swap out the colors in any way you wish. Then the inside of this blue card has a black panel. This one has a light blue panel. Here we have a red and then a yellow. And each one has a narrow strip. This one has red, then black, then yellow, and light blue. Each card has a tall, narrow print with it, and you can also evaluate what you want where in this situation if you like. Like maybe since this one has more red, I'm going to move it over here and swap it out. Like that's all just really designer's choice. Each card also gets one of these smaller scored pieces, and then the sentiments. So I'll match up the sentiments front, inside and outside with what I see here. So we did do this sentiment I really love. There are some who bring a light so great to the world that even after they have gone, the light remains. Wonderful sympathy card for someone very special. And we did 2 of those. I'm not sure if you can hear it, but there is a thunderstorm happening outside and it's really rumbling. So if suddenly the power goes out or something, that's going to explain it. Here we have The World Needs Your Light and Keep Shining. And how about It's Your Day to Shine Like a Diamond? Happy birthday. These are so sweet. They all get assembled exactly the same way. So my routine here will be to set those aside, assuming if you know how to do this one, you'll know how to assemble all the rest. We have these beautiful score lines. Here's the bump of the score. So always just make sure that that bump goes on the inside of the fold. That would be the correct way. And it is contrary to what a lot of people believe about folds. Here's the bump, and we want that on the inside of the fold because we do want the pretty paper facing out. So usually if I'm scoring a print, I put it in my Score Pal right side up. And next we have this little black panel and this guy. So what we're going to do first is take some of this beautiful washi tape and try to center it on the paper strip. Now this is a 1-inch strip, and then the tape is about 3/4 of an inch wide, so it gives you a nice reveal. Grab some scissors, and here's a tip. This washi tape does kind of like to keep a close relationship with the roll, so I just try to keep it so it doesn't exactly completely fold closed, otherwise you'll be searching for the end of the tape every time you use it. The critical next step, I think, is just to make sure that this makes it onto the panel before it gets adhered anywhere. So basically, this card has 2 flaps. It has the wide flap on the left edge, and it's going to have the skinny flap on the right edge that will attach itself behind the mat. So then they sort of interlock like that. So it's important that you remember to apply some adhesive to the back of this 1-inch tab on the flap. And I'm going to just sort of hook it around sort of the top right side of the vertical panel that nests on the inside of the card base. Once you have that attached, you can layer it onto, and you'll center this, and it should fit perfectly because this is a 4 by 5 1/4, and the card is a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Now, placement of this piece can happen once you sort of know what the reveal is. And this is so clever how that worked out. Initially, this little strip was a scrap, but in my final samples, I ended up trimming them and using them. So this will work out really nice. Just center that in that opening. Cool, right? Then we have this other print. Simply put some adhesive on the back of the panel. And I'm going to go this way with it. Center that on the front flap of this split flap card. And all that's really left are the goodies, and you have some ribbon. In fact, I had so much ribbon, I was sad when I was done. I didn't really use all of the ribbons, so maybe like one little idea if I just go with some yellow here. And I'll get some tape going and maybe make a little loop or something, because I wasn't using enough ribbon through the whole process of making the cards, and I had a bunch left over when I was done. So you have plenty of ribbon to work with. So I'm just making like a little pull tab for this with a twist of ribbon, and we'll nest that onto the flap. It should fit perfectly by design, and then add some adhesive to this. Now you have 2 choices. You can attach this right to the back of this flag flap here, or put it on the inside of the card. I liked it here because that way you do have room. And if you want to write anything lengthy, perhaps you would need a white gel pen, or you would put a liner on this with some white paper, or make your notes over here with the black panel. That's just kind of how it worked out. That's some loud thunder happening right now. So again, wow, it's kind of crazy. So here is that first card. We made this one together. And the second is the same, just different assortment of color. On the third card, I took the really sweet sticky gems. Like, these are sheets, and they are all linked together, and they all stick. So once you determine the length, you can say, oh, right by that pale yellow, I'm going to make a slice with my scissors and just go ahead and attach it. And I just love the variety of colors here on this sheet of rhinestones, and they're really handy. You can also cut them into individual pieces, which I'll show you a little bit later. So that's that one. Finally, 2 on this 4th card. Do you see the diamond? Now that is coming from the sheet of cut aparts. We have 1, 2, 4, 6, 8 diamonds on here. So you could even make it a 2-sided diamond if you wanted. This particular one, I'm not sure if you can see it on camera, but do you see how it reflects a little bit? I used some dimensional clear gel on this, went around the perimeter, then filled it all in and let it completely air dry pretty much overnight in order to have a more sparkly diamond. That's just kind of, you know, going the extra mile there, but also a really cool card for number 4, and I love the sentiments in that one as well. So let's move on to card set B. First thing I'm going to do here is once again remove everything from pocket B and sort all of those pieces in order by size. It just makes it a lot easier to find what you're looking for and, you know, sort out the pieces or deal them out. I call it the deal, to figure out what goes where, because there's so many wonderful colors involved. And again, I want to note, you can just sort them out however you wish. This is just one way. So I'm consulting, I think this is page 4 of my instructions to see the cards, and that'll help me determine what goes where in my distribution of all the pieces. So the first one has a red base, then light blue, then yellow, and black. So those are the 4 card bases for this fun structure. Life is Art, Live Yours in Color. That'll be the pocket for this one. Pretty Special. Here's to Love, Laughter, Happily Ever After. And this calls for a huge celebration. Each one gets a tag, a love tag. So this one, the tag should say Happy Birthday. This one, it should say Thinking of You. It matches the color of the card base. This next one should say Congrats, and this also says Congrats. Now every single one of these cards gets one of the larger panels. I think they're 3 by 6. And then each card also gets 2 smaller panels. Those are 2 by 6. So distribute 2 to each card. Then we have 2 strips for every card. So this one, I'm going to give it yellow, 2 yellow, then 2 red, 2 black with the yellow here, and then 2 light blue for this final card. So pretty much everything is distributed. I will stack these in order so it's easy to assemble once I've made my prototype. And again, I think you can figure it out. You know, once you get that first one done, the assembly is all the same for the most part. The first thing I'm going to do is take this pocket and turn it over so I can see the raised score line a little bit more easily. And I'm going to cut, so here's the bottom of a U shape, right? I'm going to cut to the left of this outer score line, going toward the corner, and stop at that corner. And I'm going to do the same thing from the side. So I'm going just above that horizontal score line to the corner, and that's called a miter. So I've just taken away some of that corner. I'll do the same on the other corner, just completely remove that on a wide V, and that will make my corner making very, very simple. Whenever you are making a pocket, I'll just mention this while I'm thinking of it, I always fold in the side flaps first and then bring up the bottom flap. Now, why would I do it that way? It's because if you bring up the bottom flap last, when you slide things into the pocket, if the bottom flap is out of the way, then the item doesn't catch. Whereas if it's the other way around, every time you slide this in, you risk the chance of that catching, you know, like on the top edge of that flap. So just bottom always comes up last, so it's out of the way. It's a good tip to remember, and that'll end up being the pocket for this. I've got my Club Scrap cutting mat. If you don't already have one of these, I love it. And it's bright blue, and I can always find it. Of course, having the ruler goes without saying. And a nice sharp craft knife. What I'm going to do is take the first dotted line of the ruler and align it with the yellow outside of the box on that angle in the upper corner of the tag and trim it away. Now what that does is it matches this margin between here and here to the one between here and here, and that way it looks very professional. Can you do this with the tip of your scissors or a trimmer? Yes, you can. Yes, you may. Should you? Sure. Whatever you're in the mood for. But that's just a really nice way to remove the corner of a tag so the margins are perfectly matched. You can also punch a hole into the top of the tag, and if you want it to be perfectly centered, that's where that grid ruler comes in again. So here's the 0 of my grid. I got 1 1/4 on each side. I'm going to make a little mark at the 0 here so I can see it. I made it like, I would call it a T. Then I can align the center of that T with the hole in my crocodile or punch, whatever you use. And there you have a nice hole in the top of the tag for some ribbon. So the 3 kinds of ribbon in here, we've got a beautiful blue satin, we've got a yellow grosgrain, and we have this gorgeous silver metallic ribbon. It's so pretty. I don't really care how you bring the ribbon onto the card. Maybe I'll just shove it through and do a simple knot, a single knot, so it doesn't get real bulky. And then if you like to have the swallow's tail, just fold the ribbon in half lengthwise and trim toward the center of the knot, and that'll give you a really nice looking ribbon edge. How's that for a tip? Tip of the day. Okay, so we've got some pocket action going on here, some tag action. We're in good shape there. Now fold. So it's important to fold this piece correctly. Now here's a bump of a score. So as always, I'm going to follow the rule to put that on the inside of the fold. And having done that, now I have another bump of my score here. So that gets folded back to make a pleat. Just turn the homeworks over and repeat. So here's a bump, bury it into the fold. Here's another bump, bury it also into the fold. And when you do that correctly, look at how those 2 folds meet in the center, and they also will fit perfectly into the envelope we provided for you. This is an A6 size card. I'm just kind of stretching that out again so I can see where to place these nesting panels. If you wanted to add ribbon to these panels for any reason, now would be the time to do it before you attach them to the card base, because you can't wrap the ends around to the back. So this should center perfectly into that flap. And the other 2x6 will center perfectly into the other one on the left. Designer's choice, which pieces go where. And this should fit right into the center just beautifully. Next, I'm going to deal with these little narrow pieces, and I'm going to use my grid ruler to help me attach them about, I don't know, like 1/8 of an inch from the edge of that fold on the inside from the center panel. So my ruler is kind of where I want it to be, and I've got this skinny little piece. To attach it, I'm going to use some of our bookbinding glue and a needle tipped applicator. If you ever find that your needle tip applicator is clogged, a hat pin or a straight pin works really well. Beading needles, people have been sharing their tips, have been really helpful. And I keep my hat pin right in a cork so that I can just always find it. Now I can easily dispense my glue after being kind of closed up for the weekend. I'll rest the glued strip to the edge of the ruler and then drop it onto the card. And then I know it's nice and level. And I will just turn everything around. Right now the card basically doesn't have a top or a bottom quite yet. And again, going about 1/8 of an inch from the edge of that fold, or 1/4 of an inch from the panel. That's easier to see. Nice. Okay, then I have my washi tape. I'm going to stretch that out. Gotta move this so I can see. And I'm aligning them with the edge of that strip. Now at this point you can just trim that, or if you wanted to bring, just cut a little bit more off, you could bring it to a cutting mat and just use a craft knife to trim away any excess, because again, I don't really want this tape wrapping around to the back of the card. I just want it nice and clean. So if you want, you can try to align the edge. This video angle that I have to be at, not to have my head in the shot, because it makes it harder to see, especially as I age, I confess. Okay, so I'll just trim that off. All of these steps, of course, are optional, but I think it's just a great way to use all the fabulous goodies we've included in the kit. Then finally, I'll remove the tag here. My plan, use that same liquid glue to add some adhesive to the U-shaped tabs on the bottom and the sides of your pocket. And then make sure that bottom flap folds up last. I'll center this with equal margins, left, right, and bottom on the center panel. Life is art. Live yours in color. And then this should fit perfectly into that tag, and there's room for you to write a note down at the bottom of the tag. Sweet as can be. Now for your final embellishment, one of the things that I did, and I'm just going to do it with one, is I added one of these gorgeous several of these gorgeous sequins to various random areas. 3 of them here, 2 of them there, a couple of them over here. Then you can take your sheet of your rhinestone stickers and just like trim one of them off. I like to use the tip of a craft knife to balance the self-adhesive sticker, and you can just go ahead and slide that right on top of the center of your sequin, and you got a really sweet custom embellishment. Still nice and flat for mailing. It's glued in place, so it's going to be nice and sturdy, and that's a sweet finish to this card. All the cards are assembled in the same exact way, so here is the one that we did together with the additional sequins in place. Here's the one on the blue base. All I did was just added 3 sequins, 3 on here as well, some yellow ribbon at the top, and once again, 3 sequins with yellow ribbon at the top. I love these cards, and they look so flashy and pretty when they're on the table. Okay, I think we're ready for our final set of cards. So I need you to pause me while you take everything out of pocket C and organize it by size, largest to smallest. It will continue to make the sorting or the dealing phase of this card project much easier because there are quite a few pieces. And then also turn to page 5 of your instructions. The base of the first card will be red, then dark blue, then light blue, and finally yellow. And I want to remind you that all of the pieces for these 4 cards came from just 4 sheets of 12 by 12 paper using the first diagram in your trimming instructions. The red card will receive a dark blue panel, then add a yellow panel to this one, a red, and then a light blue. Then you have these really narrow pieces. Add yellow, light blue, dark blue, and red. And then next you'll notice you have 2 pieces that are kind of like a nesting size. They're sort of rectangular. So the larger rectangular piece, let's start with that one. The largest rectangular piece matches the color of the base of the card. So that should be red, then dark blue, then light blue, and yellow. Then the nesting one matches the color of the little guy. So yellow, light blue, dark blue, and red. Oh my gosh, so many pieces. You're almost there. Now we have these larger and slightly smaller long strips. Let's take a light blue over here. Notice I'm introducing the 4th color. The larger red with this, the larger yellow, and the larger blue. Now the nesting smaller, we're going to go dark blue, yellow, red, and light blue. Finally, we get to do our sentiments. So, thinking of you lots and lots and lots and lots. You're a gem. You rock, and you add so much color to my life. Then the insides. I hope all is well with you. Thanks for everything. Thanks for all you do. And happy birthday. Ta-da! Okay, as you know the drill now, I'm going to get rid of these 3 card bases and set those aside. And here we have everything we need for the first card in this set, which again you can find at the top of page 5. Okay, we've got a score line, so find the bump and bury it, and make sure this aligns really nicely left to right. That is sort of like the incomplete part of this beautiful card. It's just this little 2-inch flap on the front. The next thing you can safely do at this point, if you'd like, is add the yellow nesting panel to this little flap. So this panel is 1 3/4 by 4 3/4, and the flap is 2 by 5. Okay, now we have this other flap, and it should have a yellow panel to go with it. So I will go ahead and nest that and get that done. And also to help improve what we see, we can take this large blue panel and add it to the inside of the card, making sure this is the front flap, right? So add this to the inside, the card base. Should nest perfectly. Okay, next we have a little more prep work to do. We can nest this thinking of you lots and lots onto the blue strip, but before we nest it on the light blue strip, we're going to add a ribbon to the bottom of this. So that's with the blue satin, just makes a real nice basic single bow. Did you notice I just was checking which way the ribbon wanted to wrap? So that's the direction I will put it in when I do wrap around this piece. So ribbon starts out on a roll, of course, with a grain direction. And if you can just cooperate with it, it will lay a lot nicer. And you can just do either an angled cut or the swallow's tail that I showed you earlier, whatever you prefer. Keep a scissors just especially for ribbon only. And now I can nest this right onto that light blue mat. Lovely. Okay, next, I'm going to temporarily take this flap and just tap it down so that it aligns with the bottom edge of my card. And then I'll apply some adhesive to this inner sentiment piece and center that within the space, and it should, and it does, fit perfectly. Lastly, I'm going to use this piece to attach the bottom flap to the top in a hinge fashion, thus the name of the card, the hinge card. I called it the vertical hinge card, but there are 2 horizontal cards in the set, so it's just now a hinge card. When you apply adhesive to this piece of paper, be really careful to only apply it within the areas that will touch the yellow panel. So a narrow strip at the top and maybe a double strip at the bottom, and that way I know for sure it's going to fit. I'm going to do one more tap down to make sure this is exactly where I want it to be. Now, if you wanted to, you could use a ruler. I'm about a ½ inch from the edge of this card base. Just lay it on there and just give me something to rest on so that I know it's level and not a crooked hinge card. And I did cover the inner sentiment with the hinge so that when you open it, it's kind of a surprise for what it will say. Ta-da! And it will stand really nice on your tabletop, and it will also mail nice and flat in an envelope. I think pretty clear to anyone who gets it how the card's supposed to work. And this colorful and cheerful palette is certainly going to brighten someone's day. Let's take a look at those remaining cards in the set. So this is the one we did together. Of course, you can see that here. And then here's the other vertical one. And I did that same little treatment to the diamond shape. I think it's just so fun. It's just a great addition. You can skip it if you want, but I think it adds a lot. I did another one with the U rock here with this guy, and I attached him with foam adhesive circles. And then finally the last one, I still had a lot of yellow ribbon. I had a lot of the wonderful stickers. So I just framed this kind of like a Broadway sign. You add so much color to my life. It could be more perfect. And then I just added a nice flat bow to this panel before adhering it to the yellow flap, and then happy birthday on the inside. So much color. Isn't that fun? So I wanted to take a second now, because you're my card makers, and I wanted to share quickly with you what I did with the stamps. Now the stamps have some fun images and some smaller text, but what makes this unique is that you can combine a lot of these in different ways. So for example, you can have shine, bright like a diamond, or sparkle, bright like a diamond, or time to shine, or time to sparkle. You were born to sparkle, you were born to shine. Shine is my favorite color, sparkle is my favorite color. It's, you know, you can have shine, live in the moment. These all interact, and we were very creative, I think, when we came up with these little sentiments and the way you can combine them to make some cool artwork. So if you get the stamps, those are some great options. I made several card samples with the stamps and also with the bonus stencil. So this bonus stencil is included is part of the collection, but not included in the kit. So we designed it to match, but this is something you can just get from our shopping cart, or if you want to have it added to your shipment, we can do that. This is called the Prism Abstract Stencil. It's an 8x8. It's a little bit larger than usual, and you can get this while supplies last. So check out my card samples. Here, the You Were Born To Sparkle, I simply used those 3 little random shapes and put them all in one acrylic block and stamp them in yellow on this card base. Here I just did some pencil coloring with Sparkle is my favorite color. Here applied ink to the stencil. 2 little sticky gems from our little strips went into the O's of the word colorful. Here I stamped the word love from the image set, cut out the individual words and inked the edges to add it to a card with a double loop bow here at the bottom. I'll show you that at a special time in the future. Here, this was done on watercolor paper with watercolor crayons in this larger Prism image. What a beautiful background. On this one, I used the larger image and then stamped the smaller squares within in a variety of colors. And every time the colors overlap, a third color is formed. Here, the stencil creates the background in yellow, and I just added a little wink of Stella to the embossed diamond and then stamped in white ink. And then finally, I used the really cool stencil with Club Scraps Stipple Mist to make this background panel, stamped the sentiment, and attached it in a really cool way to the card with wax linen thread and some foam adhesive circles. Well, there you have it, your invitation to make a bunch of cards using the beautiful Prism collection. I hope you love this one as much as I do, and I'll see you right back here next month. Thanks for joining me.